on to the kind of why we're all here, which is doing the genetic test and what are those results and how can it change the outcome of my health ultimately. So that's kind of the journey we're going to be on. And I apologize in advance that I'm drinking coffee in front of you, but that'll help me kind of slow down too. So bathrooms are back here. We'll use the restroom. We are recording this both live, so you can actually go and watch us on YouTube as soon as you leave here tonight if you want. And then I usually cut this up in about 10-minute, 15-minute segments, kind of key points, and do that on YouTube as well. So there's that. And then I just have to set myself a timer because I have a cheap camera and it only records video for 30 minutes. So I got to restart it. And as I said at my last seminar, if somebody knows of an AV student that wants to get some work for free and do this for me, that would be awesome. And I can just work on the material and not have to deal with all these computers. So anyways, we're all here for genetic testing and how can that improve our health. We're going to get into weight loss. We're going to get into cardiovascular health. A lot of different subjects tonight. Weight loss is a big one with this genetic test, but even simple things like, should I take vitamin C? How much should I take? Vitamin D, how much should I take? Should I eat a low-fat diet? Should I eat a low-carb diet? Should I do ketogenic dieting? We're going to try to unravel a little bit. We can spend, again, I'm going to try to cram this into an hour, so keep that in mind. But the ultimate goal is to live, obviously, happier, healthier lives. And so can genetics even help us with that? We're going to try to answer that question tonight as well, too. So, or what blood pressure pill is right for me? What cholesterol pill is right for me? Should I even be taking cholesterol lowering agent? And I will say I tried to get a little fancy with my slides tonight, and I've never done that. If you've seen my talks before, they're just like words on a screen, and I tried to add them, make a little bit more exciting. So if they're really corny, I can't help you with that. This is my creative genius at best. So I tried to narrow this down as simple as I could. So we're going to look at just the basic understanding of genetics. We're going to look at genotyping technology. We're not going to get into much of that, but just know that that's out there. That's come a long way. Genetic testing applications. So there's more that we just talked about those just a second ago, but weight loss, what blood pressure pills right for you, what diet is correct for you based on your genetic predispositions. And then ultimately, how can this help your health? Do you need to take more vitamin D? Do you need to take more vitamin C? How about vitamin A? What about calcium? What about iron? We're going to be looking at all of those things tonight. So this is my depiction of genetics. And if you can understand this slide, that's really what genetics is about. So I'll explain this stuff. See if you can follow me on this. So you've got half of your genes are from your mom, the other half from your dad. That's you in the bottom there. So you've got, 46 chromosomes, right? 23 pairs. There's, what's the number? 30,000 genes in the human genome. I believe that's right, on all those genes. So we kind of spin all that down. We keep looking at this all the way down to the nucleotides, down to these base pairs. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. And that's what this test is actually testing for. Are these little base pairs sometimes get mucked up. That's the easiest way that I can say it. And so if one base pair on one gene basically gets screwed up, that's where problems can, or we could even say the other way, maybe advantages potentially, like sickle cell, for example. And I don't know if this has been proven or not, but the thought when I was going to school was possibly sickle cell disease was a predisposition that you were less likely to contract malaria. I don't know if that still holds true or not, but that's one example of maybe a genetic SNP that we think is a mutation is actually maybe an advantage. So keep an open mind on some of this stuff. At least that's what I do. Some of the stuff that is shared tonight and talked about, I might talk about it one way, but maybe a year from now that might be the opposite. So we got to kind of think of it that way too. So basically DNA contains information to build a protein. Again, there's way more than that, but I'm really simplifying this down tonight. So I think of DNA as information for building proteins. And you ask, well, what do proteins do in the body? A lot of different things. So proteins, I'll just read this, are needed for life and for biochemical functions. Well, what kind of functions? So proteins can act as enzymes. A lot of enzymes in our liver. We're going to talk a little bit about liver enzymes tonight. CYP450. I had to learn about all these liver enzymes in pharmacy school. I'll be honest, forgot probably 90% of them. So like CYP450, 3A4 is, I think, the enzyme used for a lot of pharmaceuticals out there. So if you're on statin drugs, if you're on blood pressure medications, if you're on blood thinners, like warfarin is metabolized through CYP3A4. What if you have a genetic defect in 3A4 and you metabolize drugs too fast or too slow? So those are some of the things where I think a lot of this technology is hopefully going, is that we're going to be able to, before your doctor even prescribes you a medication, they first do this test, which hopefully this test takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get back. So hopefully it'll speed up and be done in 5 minutes by the time the doctor actually gets into the room, and then he looks at your DNA sample and says, yeah, you need this drug or that drug or no drugs at all, in my opinion, and go from there, maybe a vitamin or two. But then proteins can be used for transport. So we're talking about kidneys earlier. They're transporting sodium and chloride through the nephrons of your kidney. There's proteins needed for those transport molecules or transport proteins. And it's coming from DNA. It's all coming from the same material, essentially, right? Structural function, so hormone receptors. We deal a lot with hormone receptors here. So estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors, testosterone, those are all built from protein, which are all derived from DNA. If you've got a mucked up DNA that's got a nucleotide dysfunction or mutation, you might have a bad receptor that doesn't want to attach to estrogen or progesterone or thyroid or fill in the blank. So that could be a problem. But then you get into antibodies. Proteins, maybe you have an autoimmune disease and you inherited that, and it wasn't from the environment. We'll get into that too, but you inherited some kind of auto antibody, and now that's being produced by your DNA, and you're attacking your thyroid gland, or you're attacking your skin, or again, kind of fill in the blank, or you've got Crohn's and you're attacking the lining of your GI tract. And then again, proteins have many, many functions beyond that. But just get an idea that from DNA we get proteins, from proteins that do just about everything in the body that we can think of. So going back to genes, you've got one gene, again, but you get one from mom, one from dad, and they combine. And then you call that, so you got two alleles, one allele from mom, one allele from dad. You combine those, you got one gene. So just to say this out loud, an allele is alternate forms of the same gene with small differences in DNA base pairs. But I didn't say there are differences in base pairs, so going back to nucleotides, we'll talk about that in just a minute. It doesn't imply that there's a mutation there. So you can have, let's go back to DNA that builds a protein, and it's for a receptor, and both mom and dad's, the way that they build that receptor is perfectly fine. Even though they might be structured differently, the end result is they both have a functioning receptor. So, but one allele is inherited from each parent. Did I lose anyone yet? If I did, it doesn't matter. If you still do the test, I'll interpret it for you. It's fine. So here's where we get into variations, though. So genetic variations are caused by mutations. So what does that mean? Mutations can be caused, I just said this a moment ago, we can inherit it from mom or dad. Maybe mom or dad, I'm totally making something up right now, but they don't make their receptor for vitamin D doesn't work. Like they make it, but it just doesn't work. So you take the vitamin D supplement or you get it from the sun, and your vitamin D goes through your liver because it's got to get activated through your liver, and then your vitamin D's got to go through your kidneys and get activated yet a second time. I shouldn't say activated a second time, but finally activated. And then the vitamin D goes up to the door of the vitamin D receptor and nobody's home. I mean, you could potentially have a mutation like that. So that's something that you acquired from your mom or dad. That's a problem. Or you can get mutations, though. And let me step back. Well, that mutation would be in every cell of your body. mind you. Where, on the other hand, you can get acquired or somatic mutations, where those mutations, like I potentially had one on my shoulder that was removed about 10 years ago. Was anyone here for the pain seminar with Dr. Roberts or Stacy? No. So I had a mole removed, or a potential like melanoma, we'll call it, that when the pathology came back, it had cells in there that kind of looked like they were skin cancer. So they were kind of mutated, but didn't say it was cancerous. So potentially I had some mutated cells going on or something just in those cells, just in those that DNA. So it wasn't all over my body. It was just back here on my shoulder. So what I did is I removed it, cut it out, and called it a day. So, but somatic mutations are present in only certain cells, and again, not all cells. Somatic, or again, acquired mutations are caused by the environment or inaccurate DNA transcription. So let's see an example of a mutation, but let's say there's some radiation or pollutant in the air or something that you come across and that mutates a particular set of cells in your body. That could be a problem. Or just in the natural transcription of DNA, obviously our cells are turning over day to day, and maybe they, just like a copy machine, it makes a bad copy, misreads something. You could have a mutation just based on poor copying. So there's that possibility too. So that's what we're talking about with mutations. So here's really what this new test is doing, this Nutrigenomic test is doing, is it's actually looking at these base pairs within the gene. So you take one gene out of a chromosome and you analyze it, and you make sure that based on, we'll call it quote unquote standards of non-mutated genes, we know what those base pairs should look like. But we've identified that there's certain base pairs, when they get mucked up, you have a predisposition to something or another. We're going to get through what that something or another is. Maybe you have the inability to lose weight due to exercise. There's actually a genetic mutation that we've identified. Not we, I say we, they. I'm not that smart. I can't develop this technology. That says, oh, if you've got this, instead of a T, you've got an A over here at base pair number 3,421. You're going to not do well on a ketogenic diet, and we could prove that. Or another example is if you've got this base pair screwed up, I'm just making something up right now too, but your body doesn't do well with low LDL cholesterol, which we think, oh, LDL cholesterol is bad, right? I want low LDL cholesterol. But according to this SNP, your body wants high LDL. So that's a made up story right there, but you get the idea. So that's what this test is looking for. These single nucleotide polymorphisms are basically where the copy got mucked up, and we can identify that now with technology and say, okay, you're predisposed to this or that or the other. So single nucleotide polymorphisms, aka mutation, we want to call it. Mutation sounds bad though, right? Like it's necessarily bad. So that's where I'm kind of on the fence with some of this terminology. Is it really a mutation, or is it an advantage? I mean, we're only looking at like 380 SNPs in this test, and I just told you there's 30,000 genes. There's actually 10,000 or 10 million supposed SNPs that have been identified out there. I mean, we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this stuff, in my opinion. But it is impressive how far we've got. But so there's 4 key. You know what THPs are? Take-home points. I came up with that because I didn't have enough room to type all that out. So we have a lot of acronyms around here. I made that one out today, or actually I made it up last night. So THPs, take-home points. SNPs are the most common type of genetic variation. And I just said this, didn't I? There's over 10 million SNPs in your genome, supposedly. I don't know where they got that number from, but I guess we can believe that for tonight. SNPs can affect gene or protein. Let's just say protein. SNPs can affect protein function, or we can say SNPs can affect receptor function, because proteins can be receptors. Or SNPs can affect structural function. You've got, let's just say, poor collagen formation, then your skin, may not act, appropriately, let's say. Or SNPs can affect, what else did I say proteins are? Transformers, or yep, or they're also antibodies. So maybe you don't make antibodies very well, or maybe you don't make them at all, and then you don't have an immune system. That could be a problem. So SNPs can affect pretty much just everything we can think of. So knowing your SNPs can help predict individual response to drug. This is where I think the cool part is. I mean, who cares about the first 3 bullet points? Knowing your SNPs can help predict individual response to drugs, and who cares about drugs? But vitamins, foods, and much, much more. I'm really interested in the vitamins and foods, in my opinion. That's why I'm here. But if you're interested about drugs, we got that too. But I'm more interested in optimizing health. So that's where we're going to kind of spend the rest of this time. So if you're going to leave home with one thing tonight, knowing your SNPs can predict individual response to, again, drugs. I'll say this one more time: drugs, vitamins, foods, and predisposition to health conditions. That's the other thing too, is am I predisposed to this? Am I predisposed to that? Will I do good on an Atkins diet? Will I not do good on an Atkins diet? Or ketogenic diet? Or again, we'll go through some of those examples tonight. All right, so this is the point of no return. So everyone with me so far? Because if we keep going, whatever you learn after this point, you can't unlearn it. Okay. Well, maybe you could. But, all right, so look at that animation. How cool is that? Isn't that pretty fancy? My 13-year-old is like, Dad, your PowerPoint slides are so boring. And so this is my shot. Hopefully, Grace, when you watch this, that you'll at least give me somewhat of a thumbs up on this. All right. So that's DNA. All right. So now we're going to get into epigenetics. I didn't even know this term when I went to pharmacy school. Either I missed the class, I skipped out on it, or maybe it wasn't even invented yet. I'm going to go with the latter. Let's just say it wasn't even there yet. So what is epigenetics? The definition: it's the impact of our lifestyle habits that modify our gene expression or function. Everyone heard that before? You see some nodding heads? Okay. So, right. So what does that even like? So when I went to pharmacy school, DNA was stagnant, like, or even when I was in like, I don't know, 9th grade biology class, like DNA was just like, it didn't change. Like it was just there. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. Your genes are your genes and you can't, that's it. You've got them, you're stuck with them. And then this whole, scientific field of, oh, your genes maybe can get changed. So like if you take an antibiotic, this is actually a true story. If you take an antibiotic, if you're, let's say this, you're a woman, you take an antibiotic, I don't know which one, I don't remember all the details of the story, but that's not the point. You take an antibiotic, it does change your DNA, it'll affect your DNA, and you'll pass that effect on to your offspring. Mm-hmm. It's like, whoa, okay, so now there's something going on here with DNA. It actually can move around. So your genes, those alleles, what you got from mom and dad, we could possibly change them. Is that good or bad? So exercising possibly can change our DNA, change our proteins. Smoking or not smoking, drinking, eating a healthy diet or not, whether you sleep well, whether you're stressed. These are my icons for I didn't want to put words, I tried to put pictures today, right? This is a person being stressed out. I don't know what that is. And then taking vitamins or medications or pills or whatever. All this we're learning slowly that can change gene expression. So that's basically what this is all about. So we have to keep this in mind too. So if you decide to do the genetic test, there's going to be a whole questionnaire about this. Like, have you taken an antibiotic? Have you tried dieting? Are you on a statin drug? I actually have I have to take the test myself. And I haven't taken it yet, so I don't know all the questions that are on the questionnaire. I didn't do all my homework yet tonight, so I'm sorry. But there's going to be a whole list of questions that they're going to then take the answers to those and basically overlap that on to your actual SNPs. And then they run it through the algorithm. Someone way smarter than me is going to do that. And they're going to spit out all the answers. And you get this 100-page report that we get to sit down and go through, which will probably take like 5 hours, but we'll get through it one-on-one. And then we'll tell you, again, which vitamins you need to take, what's the best diet that you want to be on, and so on and so forth. So the information, I've looked at one report already. It's mind-blowing. I think it's just the coolest thing. So anyway, so that's epigenetics, where there's actually your lifestyle is and your food, everything essentially can be affecting your DNA. So So how I don't even know why I put this in there, but I thought this was just a cool slide. Something's going on, you know, your DNA spins around the double helix. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. So anyways, that's my corny animation. So where does this take us? So genetic testing applications, we can diagnose disease with it. That's pretty cool. Figure that out. That's been around for a while. Analyzing metabolism, I like that idea. I was on a ketogenic diet for 2 years. Was that the best thing for my health? I'm going to find out when I take my genetic test to see if actually I should be on a high fat diet versus a low carb diet versus high protein. So for me, it's going to be neat to see what those results are. Should I have done that? Was that advantageous? It was not that you can't do it, but the cards would be, stacked in your favor, right? That's kind of how I think of it. I want to optimize my health, so. Or selection of treatment. Should I take more vitamin D? Should I be on a particular beta blocker or something for my blood pressure? Or should I be on a water pill or should I be on a calcium channel blocker? Oh, let's do a test and we can actually kind of guide ourselves to the path that makes the most sense. So optimizing diet and lifestyle. That's kind of these two bottom parts is kind of where I like to live. There's some fancy animation. So that's your diagnosing disease, maximizing your metabolism, selection of treatment, and your diet and lifestyle. All right, so now we're going to, did I lose anyone? I feel like I'm flying through this. How are we doing on time? Doing okay? I'm only like 20 minutes in. All right. I feel like I'm going really fast. All right, nutritional genomics. Look at that animation. All right. We're going to start getting into these specific categories now. So factors that promote obesity. Some of these things are like, we all know this already, but we'll state the obvious. So genetics should be obvious now. Energy intake and diet type. So again, diet type. Some patients, again, I think intuitive, we all know this. Like some people work better on a high protein diet. Some do better with carbs and starches. Some do better with more of that keto, that more lipids and fat. So we got to find out, what our predispositions are. Physical activity. Honest with you with physical activity, we'll get into a little bit of this tonight, but aerobic activity versus weight-bearing exercise and so forth. For like losing weight, I usually tell most patients you're going to lose 1 or 2 pounds out of 10 for physical activity. The majority of weight loss is going to come down to your diet. What are you eating? In my opinion, there's other little things too, but the majority of that weight is not going to be related to can you run a half a marathon every day before work kind of a thing. And then hormones and medication. I see a lot of that here at our pharmacy. Is a little bit unique, but like with thyroid medication, optimizing testosterone levels, progesterone levels, estrogen levels. We do that all day, every day with hormones and thyroid and cortisol for that matter. I'll even we'll talk about insulin in a little bit too, but insulin's a hormone, how much insulin's running through your body, and so forth. And then breathing. I put this one on here myself. With breathing, it seems kind of obvious, but like with patients that have sleep apnea, they're more likely to gain weight. When you're not getting enough oxygen, you're not expelling enough carbon dioxide, you're going to have an issue with weight. So the cards are going to be stacked against you. So keep all of that in mind. All right, see some of these animations I'm only used to like clicking one time on this thing. Now I got to wait for all my animation to come up. I asked this already, but okay, everyone's still good. I think I'm going to reset this camera though. There we go. And I'll reset the timer. I'll restart that. All right. All right. So how does this all really work? All right. So there's a few studies out there. I like this one. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But so this was done back in 2007, or published in 2007, I should say. And I'll just read this. So it says improved weight management using genetic information to personalize a calorie-controlled diet. And so, long story short, what they did is they took two groups of patients, basically fed them the same diet, except for one group, they did not this exact test, but something very similar to it. And then based on those results, they did modify their diet and vitamins and all. Like they tweaked things very slightly. You need 20% more fat in your diet, or you don't need a calorie restricted diet. So you're gonna, instead of eating 1,600 calories a day, you're gonna stay at the 1,800 calories or 2,000 or whatever their genetic predispositions told the researcher. That's what they implemented in the study group. In the control group, they just got basically a Mediterranean diet and said just do your own exercise and call it good. What the conclusion was, and this wasn't a very long study, and it wasn't a very big study. They had 50 patients in the study group. I believe they had 42 in the control group. So we're not talking thousands of patients here by any means. So there's definitely limitations to the study. But long story short, after I think it was 300 days, I don't know why they picked that time frame, but they did. Why do I remember that? I have no idea. But anyways, after 300 days, they had better compliance to diet changes. So they were just able to stick to their diet that they were given in the study group. They had long-term BMI reduction. So in the control group, they actually gained weight, which isn't a lot. That's to say that's about a pound, 0.86 kilos. Or I'm sorry, that's BMI. And versus almost 2 points of BMI in the test group. I don't know why I put the p-value in there. Any statisticians out there? Anyways, if the p-value is less than 0.005, it's clinically significant. That's what that means. That the chances of this happening, or by chance, is basically it's very improbable. So, anyways, and then the study group, they were more likely to maintain weight loss after 300 days as well. And then this is strictly just based on moving their diet to what their genetic predisposition told the researcher. This was done after 10 months or 300 days. Oh, and I forgot to click the mouse. See, my scale moves there. So everyone knows this now, my THPs, take-home points. Thank you. From the study results. So there's some other things here. Fasting, I'm a big fan. If you ever go to the doctor, and I say if you ever go to, because I haven't seen a doctor in 20 years, but if you ever happen to go to the doctor after today, what I'd recommend, instead of getting your, well, I shouldn't say instead of, in addition to getting a fasting glucose done, ask them for fasting insulin. Fasting glucose, you can cheat on that all day, every day, and they can turn out fine for like 20 years. And your doctor's gonna be like, oh, you're fine, you're not gonna be diabetic. And then all of a sudden you go in one year and then your fasting glucose is 105, because the cutoff is, I still think it's 100 or 99 or whatever it is. And it's 105. And in my opinion, it's like, that's way too late. If you just continue to look at fasting glucose, you're missing the whole picture, in my opinion. You want to be looking at fasting insulin. Insulin is more telling of a story if that patient's really following, I will say, a carb-friendly diet. Let me put it that way. So, because some patients, if you're eating too many carbs for that particular patient and they're fasting insulin, depends on who you talk to, but fasting insulin above 6 in my book is too high. And then you're basically stacking the cards up against yourself for losing weight and so on and so forth. So, but anyways, fasting glucose levels in the study, and they didn't do, by the way, they didn't do fasting insulin, which I feel like they should have. That would have been, I would have liked that. But fasting glucose levels in the study group versus the control group dropped 20% more. It doesn't seem like a big deal, like the numbers, like their fasting glucose level, I don't know what the baselines were, but they dropped 12 points in the study group versus only 10. You're like, well, who cares about 2 points? But if you're like right on the edge, like diabetic, not diabetic, that could be a big deal. So I would have liked them to do a fasting insulin study or analyze that, but oh well, maybe next time. And then this adds to what we already know, but I'll state this or just read this out loud. Even small improvements in weight loss and biomarkers can have a significant impact on the reduction of disease, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. So sometimes you look at the data, and it hasn't moved much. Like again, this fasting glucose only changed by yeah, it's 20%, but the actual number is only 2 points on your glucose. Big deal. But you can actually see a significant impact. You don't have that heart attack. You don't have diabetes, so on and so forth. The list goes on. So anyway, there we go again. See, look at that. How cool is that? I don't think I'm going to put those in next time. So this is GX Sciences. This is the company that analyzes the DNA, your sample. It's called the Nutrigen 2 test, but just to give you the rundown of it, most complete genetic test to date, anyway, analyzes, I think I said 380, but 384 genetic variations related to more than 50 nutrigenetic categories. I'm not going to go through the 100-page report with you tonight. We'd be here, yeah, we would be here all night, probably be here in the morning yet. There are some advantages to this test. There are some other ones out there, so I just want to point these out. So you get that integration with epigenetic factors through lifestyle questionnaire. I think that's super important. We also do that with our hormone testing here. When you get so much data and you just get numbers on a piece of paper, sometimes it loses value, but you've got to like find out what the patient's symptoms are, what they've gone through, get a good medical history from that patient, essentially is what this is doing. And again, the algorithm that they run this through that I've seen on this patient report is just, it's mind-blowing to me. So I'm super excited to do mine, but it's important that you're taking into account epigenetics. You're taking into account that patient's lifestyle, their environment, all their medical history essentially, and dumping that over in and around their genetics to know what's going on. So you get personalized diet recommendations. I mean, this section, there's like 50 pages about the diet alone that you get in this report. It's just like every food, drink, additive that you can think of. It basically tells you yes, no, or indifferent. Like, should you take it, should you not? It's phenomenal. You get personalized supplement recommendations based on genetic and, again, epigenetic data. So should you take calcium? Should you take iron, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin C? The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Do you need more selenium? I will say, though, you still want to then go back and like, okay, let's say I come back and my genetic predisposition is I've got a half of the receptors, and this wouldn't make any sense, but half of my vitamin D receptors are faulty in my body. So I got to double up on my vitamin D. Instead of 5,000 units a day, I've got to take 10. I still want to go back to my doctor and actually test my vitamin D level and see where it's at. That makes sense. So, okay. Or if I need more calcium, and this report comes back and says, I need more calcium and iron. Okay, great. I'm going to take more calcium and iron, but then 3 months later, I'm actually going to go get my blood drawn. And what is my calcium level? What is my vitamin D level? And I'm actually going to get it from, I'm going to try to get it from a tissue level too.
But if the receptors are not doing it, taking more won't necessarily change that.
That's true. That was probably a bad example, but yes. Thank you for calling me out on that.
I don't know.
Yeah. But like the down effect from that is, yeah. Let's see, here's more fancy slides. Okay. So now we're going to kind of get into, there's 15 categories that these 384 SNPs that they basically analyze gets dumped into. So I just picked a few of these out. All right. So these are like the 15 categories you get with your report. They tried to break this down as simple as they could. So you get this, what they call morphological or genetic variants in weight loss. So I'm just going to read all these out because it's kind of, the font's pretty small here, but your genetic risk for just being overweight or obese, your risk of rebound weight gain, I left something out here, but your risk of rebound weight gain after losing weight. So you take 100 people, they all lose, again, I'm making this up, but they all lose 20% of their body weight. How are you predisposed to gaining that weight back? There's actually a SNP, if you have it, that you would be more likely to gain weight back after dieting, after weight loss. So doesn't that suck though? Mm-hmm. Really? How do they know that? Damn. All right. So anyways, that's on the report. Basal metabolic rate, meaning, is your metabolic rate high, low? Is it fast? Is it slow? How well can you burn calories? Essentially. Weight loss capacity on diet interventions. So going back to that metabolic rate though, so that can sometimes, you can kind of get these aha moments that you're reading the study through going like, oh, so this is why that, or I am a slow metabolizer or whatever, so sometimes it could be, validating that like, okay, it's not about, what's the word, like my ability to like, follow through with the diet per se, but sometimes the cards are literally stacked against you. Your genes are stacked against you. Behavioral genetics in food intake. So it looks at different SNPs about appetite and anxiety risk. It looks at how you're feeling. How do you feel after you eat? Do you feel full? Your satiety. I can't say that word. Satiety. And how full do you actually feel? Like it looks like ghrelin, those like the hunger hormones, all of that. Efficacy of physical exercise. So endurance exercise and HDL levels. So there's actually a SNP. If you're looking at HDL, I think I have this one, so I'm really excited about it. I've always had a low HDL. It's always been in the tank. I think for guys it should be above 35 or 45, and mine's always like in the 20s and 30s. So I think I have that SNP that keeps my HDL. That's what I'm using as my get out of jail free card on that one. But exercise to reduce body fat. So there's actually a SNP that if you have that genetic, we're going to call it a mutation, that you don't have, if you are exercising and you're not losing weight, maybe you're not set up to do that from a genetic standpoint. Fat metabolism, so it looks at your response to monounsaturated fats. We're not going to get into all that. We can spend a whole night just talking about fats and MUFAs and PUFAs, but there's saturated fats, unsaturated fats. There's monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. You got fish oils, you got vegetable oils, and so forth. It looks at all these different predispositions, response to fat intake, and to improve HDL levels. I will say in general, when I did my ketogenic diet, my HDL went like through the roof. It was like 80. I was so proud of it. It's back down now, I think in the 30s again. This was years ago, but I will say I was able to bump up my HDL level when I did my keto stent for a couple of years. Looks at carbohydrate. I'm not going to stop reading all this, but looks at carbohydrate metabolism. Looks at lipid metabolism. So some of these things that cut off, but predisposed to low HDL. Again, I think that's me. Predisposed to increased triglycerides. Oxidative LDL. That's one thing I do like to harp on is I would encourage you when you get your cholesterol tested to, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't care what your LDL level is. That's everyone's bad cholesterol. I care if it's oxidized because LDL in and of itself, like if you follow, what's his name? Dr. Is it Perlman or Petterman? The guy that's the Alzheimer's guru. That LDL is an antioxidant in the brain. It actually works as an antioxidant. It's neuroprotective in the brain. So, and there's other things we're not going to get into, but look at oxidized LDL. LDL in and of itself isn't bad. It's if it gets oxidized, then it starts clumping up in your arteries and can give you a heart attack or a stroke or all kinds of other nasty things. But again, I'm not so much worried about LDL, but it's if it's oxidized. So if you don't want your LDL to oxidize, you can take supplements. You could stop smoking, you could stop drinking, you could do a bunch of other things. So take some more vitamin C, all that stuff. Get a good night's rest. All right, so I think that was the first 6 categories. There should be 11 more. It looks at glucose metabolism. So risk of increased glucose levels after fasting. So when I used to do diabetic training, I had my diabetic patients I had them test their blood glucose after 2 hours, and if it was elevated, they needed to have a certain protocol that they had to follow, or risk of insulin resistance. So maybe you have a high, because you're all going to go get your fasting insulin levels done, right, in the next 30 days for me, or next time you see your doctor. But maybe you have a high fasting insulin level because you have a genetic predisposition, and you've got basically crummy insulin receptors, so your body's got to produce more insulin to get the sugar out of your blood and into your cells. Sometimes we don't want to know all this information. Right? Yeah, like, God dang it, do I really want to know all this? Risk of type 2 diabetes. Flavor sensitivity. So, I mean, this stuff is kind of crazy, right? There's a SNP where you're more sensitive or less sensitive to bitter flavors, salt, sweet. So yeah, I have a sweet tooth. Well, maybe they do. Let's go test their DNA, right? Right. I think I have a salt sensitivity. I'll put salt on everything. All right. Especially when you're doing keto. Oh, I love that. You just salt everything. You guys know my trick for my snacks for ketoing? I would take a Kind bar, one of those dark chocolate ones, and put a layer of butter on it, and then just salt it until the butter stops sticking, and I would eat that. I know, it sounds gross, but then at the same time, it's like, ooh, I know. Oh, so good. Because you had a little bit of sweet in there, and then you had all that salt. Yeah, it was amazing. It was like 30 grams of fat. Boom. So, yeah, I'd eat that in like 2 minutes or 2 seconds. I don't know. It was really fast. Detox and balance. So it looks at your antioxidant. I can't say that word anymore. Antioxidant capability. Again, this is really cool stuff. Supplementation. So it looks at calcium absorption. Do you need to take more or less calcium? Do you have osteoporosis? And then your doctor's telling you to take calcium, but then you can't absorb it anyway. So what's the point? Calcium balancing, iron toxicity risk. Maybe you've got that SNP where you don't handle iron very well. Low plasma iron risk, magnesium balance, selenium balance, sodium sensitivity. So yeah, are you sensitive to more salt? Well, you might have a predisposition to it. Intolerances, and again, this isn't diagnostic, by the way. It just tells you if you've got a predisposition. So I want to be clear on that. But like if you're lactose intolerant, more sensitive to alcohol, gluten, caffeine metabolism, like your slow metabolizer or fast metabolizer of caffeine. Fructose, so eating a lot of fruit, is that good or bad for you? Some patients, they come into the pharmacy, oh, I don't tolerate it. Doesn't do well for me, that kind of thing. Man, look at all this animation. All right. And then I think this is the last slide. This is the last 4 categories it looks at. So then it looks at vitamin deficiency risk. Vitamin A, B6, I'll just read these out. Folic acid. I'm sure everyone knows about like the MTHFR. I've heard of that. That's a common one. I have patients come in almost every day. My doctor said I have, or somebody told me I have the MTHFR mutation, but you can't methylate folic acid. So we've got special vitamin B9 over there, folic acid, that's already methylated for you. So the enzyme that you don't have to methylate your folic acid, you can just get it in a pill now. So B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, and then matching type diet. So again, is your metabolism set up basically to burn on carbs? Is it better burning on protein? Is it better burning on fat? Which one is it? Is it all 3? So it looks at that, or it looks at, does your body do better with low calories or more calories? Inflammation risk. So I just spelled this out, but like it looks at TNF alpha. That's a marker of inflammation, causes inflammation in the body. That switch can get turned on. Are you predisposed to having that switch turned on more? And that's why you have inflammation going on in your body. Or it looks at IL-6. It looks at, but it also looks at IL-10, which is nice. That's your anti-inflammatory interleukin. So these are just proteins that either help with inflammation, make it worse, make it better. And then it looks at hormones, and not in the, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, it looks at hormones? Like I was thinking estrogen, progesterone, and no, it's not that. It has to do with diet and eating. So leptin, bisphatin, ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and adipotectin, I can't even say that word, but it looks at hunger hormones and hormones related to eating, satiation, I can't say that word either, but how well we feel after we eat and how our body handles calories. So. So here's where, like, that 100-page report that I was talking about, actually I think it's more than 100 pages, but I just gave a few snapshots of this, but I'm not going to go through this line by line, but you basically get this report where it gives you all these subcategories, like your resting metabolic rate, are you at risk for an increased BMI? It actually tells you the SNPs or the genes that they've analyzed, and then it gives you some insights on every single one of these predispositions. So like your resting metabolic rate, if you've got these SNPs, it says predisposition to burn more or less calories while resting. So it'll tell you, do you have basically it tells you, do you have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism? Or are you more predisposed to have a high BMI or a low BMI? And it goes through all 384 of these SNPs. Kind of crazy. Yeah. So this is the one for lipid metabolism predisposition. So are you at risk for dysregulation of HDL levels? Are you predisposed to having high or low LDL levels? Are you predisposed to having high or low LDL oxidation? And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So very informative. Looks at glucose predisposition. So okay, I guess I'll just read these subcategories, but fasting blood sugar, diabetes 2 risk, insulin resistant risk. And again, it gives you all of these genes that it's looking at. So pretty extensive. Here's the vitamin deficiency risk. This isn't all of them, but it's a good chunk of them. But vitamin, I think I've read this off already, but yeah, tendency to be vitamin A deficient, or increased risk of B12 metabolism deficiency, or low plasma levels, or inherited risk of vitamin C metabolism deficiency, or low plasma levels. So get really specific.
So is this an actual report that you're reading of someone's results?
Of this, no.
Oh, okay. So that's just,
This just tells you they categorize it basically as a 0 to 100%.
okay.
And so like so it'll kind of summarize all this and tell you like, okay, you're 50% possibility or predisposed to whatever particular category we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it give you suggestions then, like on how to address those as well?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where there's a lot of information. Yeah. Yeah. Like that, not, it's like, okay, I've got all this information, now what?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Inherited risk of vitamin D metabolism deficiency or low plasma levels. Well, even if you're looking at this vitamin D issue and you've got a SNP that, again, maybe you don't hydroxylate vitamin D or activate it well enough, well, then you still have to go and test your vitamin D level after you have this information here too. So again, this is not diagnostic.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a lot of information. It's a really cool tool, but then it leads to probably more questions. This is just a start. So I didn't mention this, but I can mention it. $350 is what we sell it for. But there's a lot of, again, for me, I think it's every penny worth it. There's a lot of information in here. But then you want to be committed, in my mind, are you going to do something about it then when you've got all this information? You got to be ready and prepared for that too.
And does this stuff, is this kind of like a one-time thing? Like if you take this test and it kind of gives you these mutations or predispositions, are you generally likely to stay like that for the rest of your life or have those issues, or will those change over time?
Well, I would argue with the whole epigenetic that I think it could possibly change. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It would be. I don't know if that's ever. Well, I'm hoping they would study that. Take a group of patients,
Right.
do this, do some kind of test or experiment. I hate to say it that way, but yeah. Exercise predispositions. I'll just read it. So, inherited genetics related to expected efficacy of the exercise in fat reduction. So, basically saying if you exercise, are you going to lose weight due to fat? So, or inherited genetics related to the expected efficacy of the exercise in cholesterol regulation. So when I exercise, is my cholesterol actually going to improve? Am I going to lower my cholesterol level due to exercise? Well, we're going to look at this gene and see if you've got a mutation on it or not. So in conclusion, so it says, I'll just read this out loud as well too. Your genetic predispositions are not guaranteed outcomes. So we can, even though, let's read it. So whether or not a gene is expressed is still largely dependent upon your environment and lifestyle. So again, this is just a really cool tool in my opinion. So the example here, like I've heard, I hate to say it, but I've heard this a gazillion times over the last 20 years of being a pharmacist. the nature of my job. But I have patients come in and they're like, well, I'll just read this. So it says, yeah, I'm predisposed to diabetes based on my genetic. Well, I haven't heard that yet, but I hear this all the time. My mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle's diabetic, so I'm going to be diabetic. Like, really? You're going to be diabetic? Like, how do you know that? You know, so it says, well, therefore, I'm guaranteed to be diabetic myself. So, like, if somebody takes this test, you know, and they're predisposed to insulin resistance and weight gain and et cetera, and then, you know, they got a family history of diabetes, it's not, you know, you could still control the outcome of what your genes are doing. So just keep that in mind too. So, all right. It's a lot of information. I ran through that maybe a little bit too fast, but any questions? Open it.
I have a question about leptin. Leptin seems to be a buzzword these days.
Yeah, so there's a whole, I'm going to defer that.
Okay.
There is a whole, I'm going to shut this off, seminar on our YouTube channel with Dr. Whitcomb. It's like 2 hours long on leptins.
Okay.
So you can get your leptin level measured, and then from there, determine what diet is going to be better.
Test, this genetic test, saliva test?
It's a cheek swab.
Oh, it's just a cheek swab.
Yeah.
Okay, that you do right here.
You actually do it at home. That's a good question.
Oh, you take it home?
You take it home. You literally just buy the kit and
Got it.
then
And then mail out the kit.
mail out the kit. Yep. And then when that comes back, I will call you. We'll sit down and
Can
probably
you
make a
pick
pot
and
of coffee.
choose maybe? Maybe you don't want everything. Maybe I just want to know a
you.
couple certain things. Do you have like an express kit? I don't need to know all this stuff, but there's a couple things I want to know.
There's not.
Okay.
Not yet, anyways.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Good question. That would be nice if you could like a la carte it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to know about this side of it, but
Yeah, because I was intrigued with the whole food part.
yeah.
What food? I just lost 50 pounds.
Awesome.
It was all from
Congrats.
food. I didn't exercise a day.
See,
It
thank
was
you.
all about
That
the
was-
food choices I made.
Yep.
I was guided with a program, but now that I'm maintaining, I kind of want to know how much fat I should eat, how much, my macros.
Exactly.
I wanna know
And it
my
breaks
macros.
down your macros in this report. I think.
So it'll tell me what my body requires for macros.
Yes.
I'll know what to eat.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I think the
Well,
real value of this is the, from a diet standpoint, like, what is the best diet for me? What is the best diet after I lose weight? What,
I was one of the like 11% that gained on the keto.
I lost 20 pounds on the keto diet. I gained
No, I
20
gained,
pounds.
and everyone else, they're scratching their head. We've never seen anybody gain.
Oh, stop.
I was
Yeah.
just like that. So
Yeah.
that's why I struggle. And losing weight, I didn't eat fat at all. No fat at all. And it
So-
took, my hair kind of suffered in my skin a little bit. So,
That's not, I hear that a lot.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you know
Yep.
why they chose the 384
84?
genes they chose?
Maybe it's the ones that they could find. I have no idea. I know, right? Because if there's 10, what did I say, 10 million SNPs,
Yeah.
30,000 genes.
Yeah.
Probably just the 384 that have enough scientific backing on them. That part, I'm not a geneticist. I know that it's good question. I just don't. I know, right? How they identify these SNPs in the first place? Which ones are good? Which ones are bad? When do you start reading the? I mean, right? There's so much in like. When do you start reading the genetic code? When do you stop reading it? Like, I mean, that's yeah.
So you said it's a swab?
It's a swab.
Cheek
Yep,
swab?
cheek swab. Like if you've ever done like 23, like I've done the 23andMe test, basically what it is. Yeah.
So how is it different from the 23andMe test?
As far as the collection goes, nothing. It's just they're
Oh, just
software.
go to a database in China or anything?
Well, so that's I left that slide out.
Has the law caught up with that? Because
I
I
know.
know there was concern about
I
protecting
know,
genetic
that's-
information.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like
I don't think.
I
so
had to
either.
read all the fine print, I guess, before I send mine in, but like, do they share their information?
Right.
Yeah. Are you then like excluded from health insurance because now somebody knows that
Oh,
you have all these SNPs?
yes.
I'm assuming it's all protected from the GX, when you sign off the little, there's a waiver that you sign with GX Sciences, you know, but
HIPAA.
yeah, protected.
You would think so.
You would
Well,
think.
you take yours and you tell us how.
Yeah, I'll see how it shows up on the dark web, I'll let you know. But I'm like, I have nothing to hide. I don't care if you know my DNA or not. Like, if you want to clone me, go for it. So,
Yeah.
Go for it. But that's just me.
Does the 350 include you going through it with us too?
So that's a good question. So I'm going to offer that. Well, I told Monica asked me, that's my wife. She's like, well, what are you going to offer for a special tonight? I said, well, I'll offer my consultation fee is usually $200. I will offer that to the end of the year. So if you buy a genetic test, then I'll waive the $200 to sit down and chit chat for a while and figure this out. Because yeah, it's once you get all this information, it is really just a start. Because then it's like, well, how much, what diet am I going to eat? Well, that one's pretty easy because that one's laid out for you. But then all the vitamins and supplements and that kind of thing, it's like, well, how much do you need to take or not take? And then there's a whole series of tests that we then would have to do to let us both know if the corrections we made, how much of an impact that was. Yeah. Because this, as cool as this test sounds, it's not an exact science either. Like, these are just predispositions to some of these issues.
So you said that they're ranked though, it's like you get a percentage score, which would tell you if you're more or less predisposed to
Yeah.
something, is that?
And that was a
true?
little bit gray for me too. Like,
Okay.
it's still, to me, it was kind of like a yes or no, but they ranked it like a 1 to 4. Like it seemed to be like a 25, 50, 75, or 100%. I'll be honest, I still haven't grasped exactly that because some of the numbers were like, this patient's, the example that they shared with me, the GX Sciences company shared with me was like, this patient has a 33.34% predisposition to type 2 diabetes. I'm like, where'd you come up with that percentage? That you're thinking, really? Yeah. So some of that, I'm still like, I'll be honest, I don't have my mind wrapped around all of that. All right, very good. I will stick around for more questions on anything. Doesn't have to be genetic stuff. Could be